Have you been considering strip tillage on your farm? This 6-part video series is going to look at the equipment, the economics, and how to make strip tillage work for you. In this video, we're going to talk about strip tillage as a system. We're going to talk to our producers about how strip tillage is more than just, a new implement on the farm, but it really has to be incorporated as an entire system and requires some equipment and management changes, and how they make that fit in across their entire cropping system.
How does strip till fit into your overall cropping system?
So for us, it was really complementary. It has really fit like a glove. Again, we were already no-tilling wheat, already no-tilling soybeans, and this was the complement as far as allowing us to basically leave as much residue on the soil surface as we could to mitigate erosion and essentially just allow really good biological activity. So it was a really super fit for us.
So you've changed your tillage system up. You've got different ground conditions to work on. How has strip till changed things for harvest in corn or your other crops as well?
Yeah, so for strip till for us, corn has definitely helped with flotation in the fall. Just having that, that ground, like you got a little bit of work soil, but your tires still have a lot of firm ground to drive on. And it allows you to get harvest more clean. And it's also a rotation thing, because if you make less of a mess in corn, it's easier to no-till your beans and so on. It's a whole system approach, and having a clean harvest that fall for corn, it helps you do no-till for the rest of your crops.
So how does strip till fit into your overall cropping system in terms of rotation, the crops that you're growing, etc.?
Currently, we're strip tilling the bulk of our corn acres. We're not 100% there. We no-till our soybeans and our cereals. And so strip till is, my goal with it is to get to 100% of the corn acres into a strip till, or maybe even start phasing the strip till out into more of a no-till situation. We dabbled this year with some strip till soybeans. We'll see how that turns out. Currently, there's not really that much of a difference between our straight no-till versus our strip till beans. TBD.
And what's keeping you out of 100% strip till corn currently?
Oh, we farm in reality. And so there's always going to be some need for some tillage, cleaning up some of our errors. And, actually this year, nearly 100% of our conventional tillage acres had been tiled in the last year or two, and we absolutely had to deal with tiles settling or just leveling the job.
So in moving to strip till, what equipment have you either replaced or changed in the system?
So as Warren has touched on before, we still have all of our equipment that we used prior to using the strip tiller. In the fields that we are stripping and then planting, we've essentially replaced 3 tractors. The broadcast fertilizer, the stone picker, and the cultivator, plus the man hours behind each person running those tractors.
And so, Christine, you said you still have all that equipment. Will you have to maintain that equipment, or with time you'll find that you don't need that other equipment and it can exit the business?
There's always going to be a need for it. You're only human. You're always going to make mistakes not mistakes necessarily, but there's always going to be ruts to clean up after a messy fall. You're going to be improving your land for tiling and clearing fence rows. There's still going to be a need for that equipment on the farm. Do we use it a lot less? Yes, 100%. Definitely has decreased the usage of it. But because we still use it, we still need to maintain it. So that equipment comes through the shop still every year. Yeah,
this spring was, I think, the first year that we did not change a cultivator tooth because they're nowhere. We're probably going to get 10 years out of a set now instead of 80% of a year. Yeah.
So what's a normal crop rotation for you guys, Gary?
We're predominantly corn, soybeans, and rotate a little bit of wheat through our cropping system. Wheat, we have farms that have never seen wheat. Just depends on, we have farms that should require wheat every 3rd year and stuff like that, so they get predominantly, so our acres on wheat are a lot smaller than corn and soybeans.
So Gary, what would you say have been major changes in your fertilizer program since you guys have made the transition to strip till?
We came from a plow system where you bulk spread your P and K, plowed it down to, in a 2-year fertilizer system where we were fertilizing for corn 1 year and the soybeans the next year. Now we do that except for we place it 5 inches in the ground. All our P and K goes down with sulfur and some zinc in the fall. Come back, plant corn in it. Year after that, plant soybeans into 7.5 inches to each side of that corn row unit. And the soybeans take up the rest of the nutrients. And then 3rd rotation is wheat. And that's all bulk spread. And that's our system.
So what is your typical crop rotation, Ken?
So our crop rotation is a 3-year rotation. Corn, soybeans, followed by soft wheats generally.
Do you use your strip tiller for crops other than corn in your rotation at all?
So yeah, in the past we have grown some dry beans, and we would strip till wheat stubble and then plant dry beans on it the following spring. Got along really well, had some really excellent results, fairly easy weed control, not a lot of white mold pressure. Just it was a good system in general for a clipping dry bean. The reason we got away from it is it messed up our rotation a little bit, but essentially we successfully grew dry beans on strips after wheat.
So what has changed in your fertilizer program with the move to strip till?
Not as much as you would think. The first year we didn't really know how to change things. There's a lot of interesting ideas out there, particularly on the internet. And so the first year we basically took what we had been previously broadcasting and incorporating with a field cultivator, urea and potash, and we just put that through the strip tiller at the same rate, banding it and incorporating it into the strip. And that worked very well for us. Following years, we've moved the potash away from the spring application, putting it on in the fall, and that was very nice for us because it got that work out of the way. It's quite a few tons if you add it up, and that's demand on the fertilizer plant that we no longer had in the spring. And and then we also made some pretty significant changes. We had been side dressing in hydrous ammonia, and we did that the first year in the strip till. It worked fine, but I really struggled with the concept of working hard to not disturb the 20 inches between the berms to 1 month later come back and tear it all up with a shank running 8 inches deep. And so we, since that first year, have switched to a side band dribble on the surface with a wide drop.
When you come back to corn, do you move the strips or do you leave them where they were the last time?
Yeah, that's been the question for 5 seasons. Initially, I liked the idea of shifting over with a no-till soybean program. You can quite often still see the remnants of the corn rows from now 2 years ago. And I like the idea of leaving that residue undisturbed. We could drive on it, but after a couple of years of that, of shifting back and forth, we kind of started to get lost and forgetting maybe where our severe compaction was. It wasn't really working with the controlled traffic as well as I had hoped it would. So now our emphasis in a corn bean rotation where every other year we're strip tilling, we're now trying to keep the corn rows the same place every year. And I would suggest with RTK, even in a corn bean wheat with no-till soybeans on 15-inch and no-till wheat on 7.5, it actually all works out really well. Believe it or not, you can get 4 wheat rows between corn rows, and the 2 soybean rows will fit between them. And I have photos of all 3 years worth of residue intact in between going back to strip till again. For us, we've modified the machine to handle the root balls from 2 years ago, and now we much prefer to move that residue out of the way and keep the corn growing always in the same spot.
So does strip tilling, or the move to strip tilling, lead you down a path towards controlled traffic farming? And how do you see that coming together?
Yeah, the two lend themselves towards each other very well. One of the main focuses of strip till is you don't drive where you plant. And the same goes with controlled traffic. And so for us, it's been a challenge with very little of our equipment matches up in terms of width, but with a 40-foot strip till bar, a 20 or a 60-foot corn planter, and then a 120-foot sprayer, you know, we start to get some patterns here where every third strip till pass also is a corn planter pass, and is for sure multiple sprayer passes. And so for us, we've fallen backwards into, I call it quasi-controlled traffic, where it's based primarily around the sprayer, which is arguably our most destructive tool when it comes to soil compaction, and we've really pinpointed it into 120-foot tram lines that every third pass of the strip till and every second pass falls in this perfect storm. And that's where we struggle with corn-on-corn strip till because, well, we have to shift over that 15 inches, and now we're trying to plant directly in what's potentially been 10 sprayer passes over a 3-crop rotation on those same tire tracks. We're now trying to grow corn in there, and we have struggled a bit with that. But as far as a corn bean rotation or even a corn bean wheat rotation, the system's worked extremely well for us.
So Ken, any changes you guys have made to your corn planter moving towards the strip till system?
Not really. And actually our planter is a very simple system. So essentially it's a stock row unit with pin adjust row cleaners on the front, Keaton seed firmer, and then we do run a spading type closing wheel. We're using Dawn curve tines. It really hasn't changed a whole lot because we didn't come from a full no-till system with coulters. So there is no coulter, has been no coulter on our planter, and still is not any coulter on our planter. So a fairly light stock system that can be stuff bolted on, and then come trade time, stuff just comes off, or whatever you can do. It's a pretty sweet system.
So Ken, talking about ground conditions when you come to harvest time with strip till, have you noticed any changes from a harvest perspective at all?
So strip till was kind of completing the whole trifecta of no-till wheat and soybeans, and so generally speaking, because you have that uniform mat of residue in between the rows, especially in a late corn harvest, you don't get stuff sticking to the tires or the tracks, and so it bears up equipment a little bit better. Water tends to infiltrate it a lot better, and we just tires stay cleaner because there's something between it and the dark soil, especially when you get into running in damp conditions late in the fall.
So again, Gary, I hate asking this question, but this is where we learn the most and where everybody else learned the most as well. What's been your most expensive lesson up to this point, making that transition to strip till?
Probably the most expensive lesson we've learned is on the equipment side. Finding a piece of equipment that could put a uniform strip down, which would contain the soil properly in the berm. Our first lesson really taught us how important that piece of equipment is. Coming up with something that really puts down a good fall strip. this simplifies the rest of the system up.
So if you were talking to somebody today thinking about strip till, no experience on their farm, would you suggest to them to get some different machines on there to actually see how they perform on their farm?
Exactly, yeah. You know, if a coulter system works on your soil, fine. In our situation, the only system that would work best is shank machine. And in particular, one that can contain the soil properly and build a proper berm, a uniform berm.
How did you manage those equipment costs making that transition into strip till?
There was, you know, like any equipment, it's to get into it, it's especially a change, it's expensive. But as we're adapting it, we realized that, you know, our old system needed replacement. So, you know, we just traded plows for tillage equipment.
So what is the biggest win for you guys as a farm operation with the move to strip till?
As the stone picker, I will have to say the least, there's less stones that we have to pick with the tractor, and even less stones to pick in soybean no-till the following year.
Yeah, which, you know, we say tongue in cheek, but when you start adding up the dollars and cents, that was a full-time job on our farm for about 3 months in the spring. You know, a significant dollar value goes with that, along with you know, mechanical investment. We had basically a dedicated bi-directional tractor, specialized buckets, stone picking equipment, and then yeah, we run over all of our bean ground with 2 John Deere Gators to pick up anything. The roller didn't quite get smushed down enough, and yeah, it's like one of those see it to believe it things, but you don't bring the stones up, they tend to stay down.
Any other comments, Mike, on the challenges of getting into the strip till system?
Yeah, so I guess we were kind of lucky. Our first John Deere unit, the original unit on this bar, we actually bought it used. It was a demo unit, so it allowed us to get into the system cheaper. We didn't do fertilizer right away, so that also saved us some money getting in. So we first got comfortable with just the tillage part, and then we moved into adding fertilizer in a different unit. So we did more stepping stones. We didn't, like us personally, jump all the way into it. This unit's getting a little bit more expensive, but we're kind of figured out what exactly we wanted. And everyone farms a little bit different, so it's important to work your way into it. Another important thing is your cost per acre. You want to look at your wear points and et cetera, because that can make a huge difference from one strip till to another strip tiller as well, depending on how their bearings are, what type of wear points they have. And you don't think about it, but as soon as you own the unit, then you really think about it. So that's another thing we noticed. Part of the reason why we switched to a shank unit, they have a little bit less wear points. So.
How did you manage your equipment costs in your move to strip till?
So it is, if you are going to buy all new iron and invest in guidance and everything all at the same time, it's a pretty big hill to climb. The thing is, though, when you took the whole package of what we had invested in that and then looked at how it was going to go across acres and mitigate other costs in terms of you know, moldboard plows or big discs, neither which come cheap, plus big cultivators which don't come cheap, plus the horse to pull them in the spring, plus the guy to put in the seat. And when we could eliminate all those other things, even the big hill to climb as far as getting into strip till was easily justified.